Too bad. And then I got a seat on the Elizabeth line.
Did somebody give it up for you? They looked at you when that man needs a seat.
Some old pregnant woman.
Yeah.
Pushed her aside.
Welcome to Cloud Realities, an original podcast from Capgemini, and this week a conversation show about experience and digitalization. However, we're going to look at that from the incredibly complex world of defense. I'm Dave Chapman.
I'm Esmee van der Giezen.
And I'm Rob Kernahan.
And I'm delighted to say that joining us today is Ben Sparke, the Enterprise Azure Cloud and AI Specialist for UK Defense at Microsoft. Ben, how are you doing?
Good, how are you?
Very well, thanks. Thank you so much for joining us.
No, thank you.
We are very much looking forward to hearing your stories today and giving us some insight into a very different world.
Yeah, really excited to be on the show.
Wonderful. Now, Rob and Esmee here. How you doing?
Hello.
You all right?
We're here. We're back.
Actually in person.
Yeah, I know. Face to face. A bit weird.
It makes a nice change, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah.
It does.
You're in 3D, Dave, which is always a bit shocking.
Vivid.
5D.
Vivid, I like to call it.
Vivid. Intense.
Vivid. How's your week been?
Not so much fun on travel and transport. A journey that should have taken me 2 hours took 5.5. I wasn't happy at the end.
Did having all of your documentation printed out help you with that?
It did. It did. I was able to grip it when I was angry about things getting cancelled and nothing working.
Yeah, like
chewing it.
How are you doing, Ez? You all right?
Well, good. And I have to admit, I actually bought a LaserJet printer.
You see?
I mean, this doesn't feel like the most modern technique. Exactly, printing things out.
Yes.
Printing things out.
Yes.
So, but was it one of those purchases that when you got it, was like weirdly satisfying?
Yes, because I first had a very expensive other printer, which was not a laser. You probably know.
Bubble jet, was it? Or something?
Yeah,
they're useless.
And then, the black wasn't working, even though there was loads of ink in it. So I was so frustrated.
Has anybody had a bubble jet printer that ever works beyond the first page that's ever printed out?
You don't think that's the business model where they break really quickly, so you have to keep buying one? Yeah.
And we call Rob LaserJet once in a while. So I bought a Rob.
Just for the record, I refuse to call Rob LaserJet.
Because it sounds a bit cool, doesn't it, David? And that's your objection.
I just simply can't buy into it.
Can't have a nickname that makes him sound dynamic.
You see him
and
with
exciting.
a caper.
No.
So whilst we're on technological things, Robert, and things being a little confusing, what has been confusing you this week?
Right, Dave, it's a big one this week. Existential in nature.
Brace yourself, Ben. Brace yourself. Existential in nature, I heard.
Right. Digital twins, and we've talked a little bit on the show about creating a digital twin of yourself, a human.
Mm-hmm.
It's 5 years' time. We're able to accurately recreate you as a digital twin.
Okay. Would
you allow that? Would it be acceptable to have that posthumously represent you in court?
Oh, I see. In court?
Yeah, so it's such a good twin that it can testify on your behalf posthumously. How would you feel about that? It's very accurate. It's very good. 5 years' time. But when there's problems that need to get solved, that's confusing. Because I'm like, would you want to do that?
I thought you were going to go down the road of like 2-pack holograms or something like that with this. No.
Like literally, can it legally represent you when you're not there?
Who owns my digital twin at this point?
Well, it's independent. It's you. So you'd have to have somebody who runs it for you independently, but it's you, and you're a digital being that can survive after.
I need to explore the ecosystem of how the digital twin thing happens.
Well,
what's the infrastructure?
Well, I don't know what the infrastructure is. It's 5-10 years' time. It runs on something that you've paid for, so you can be represented, or indeed the state can use to bring you back and say, we need to ask you a question.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
So so I've gone to the digital twin company and allowed them to make a digital twin of me.
Yes.
How do I know they're not going to put adverts in the middle of it?
Halfway through your response, you have to start referring to some coffee company. Right. I always did enjoy drinking their coffee.
Exactly. I didn't even like that coffee. So everybody that knew me would know that I didn't like instant coffee.
There's loads of uses to it. So your family could ask you questions about your life experiences and things like this, continue to interact with you. Or if something needs to be tied up legally around your estate or something like that, you could be there. I mean, there's lots of uses, but do you want to be represented in that way? This is the confusion, because it could be very useful, and it's likely that technology will get to a point where it probably can, if you have enough experience behind the individual.
It feels to me like the commercialization of something like that could be hijinks involved in it.
Yeah, potentially. You'd have to really trust the organisation.
I think it would have to be governmental, wouldn't it?
Yeah. It'd have to be something like that, where you have a digital version of yourself and the government regulate it so it's not corrupted, etc.
Yeah.
Well, you'd have to trust the government as well, though, don't you?
On the
That's the other
emotional
thing.
side, I would wonder if I would. Luckily, my dad's still alive. But if he would pass away, I would love. But I was wondering, would it also type with 2 fingers? Because my dad still types with 2 fingers.
I guess it would have to, wouldn't it?
But
I mean, if it didn't, it wouldn't be the representative, would it?
Well, what is the digital twin? Is it like words? Is it
a robot? Is it a robot?
And here we are getting into the confusion.
Yes.
Fire up a little disc you put on the table. There's Dave Chapman. We can talk him. We can talk to him and ask him questions.
Would it be like in Star Wars, when you got the little hologram things?
The little hollow disc. You could carry a Dave Chapman around with you in your pocket.
Who wouldn't want that, Rob?
I mean, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, that is.
That's where you're really going with this, isn't it?
I just want a little you in my pocket.
Oh my. Let's not.
On that note, very well done, Rob. All right, Ben, let's get into it. You've had a bit of a storied history, so why don't you wind us back and tell us how you ended up in cloud at Microsoft?
Yeah, it's quite a strange journey, and I guess a lot of serendipity to it. A lot of things. I was just very lucky to be in the position I was in. I guess I started off. I did war studies at university, so I didn't come from a technical background. And then I joined the military. Primarily, I started in the infantry, so I was armoured in warrior fighting vehicles. And then I moved into the Rangers. And it was actually through the Rangers, I then moved into an intelligence role.
Right.
And once I joined that intelligence role, I started to get a lot more access to information. I started to use a lot more IT systems.
In your day job at the time, sort of thing.
Yeah. And actually, I started working with a small company that ran an open source intelligence service. And I started to furnish that to my the various other intelligence analysts I ran. And they started deploying with this technology. And for me, it was just the fact that through an application on their phone, I could give them a resource that I couldn't furnish with human beings.
Right.
So we went from a situation where the whole point of Rangers was to deploy British troops in further afield locations in higher risk areas, but we didn't have tons and tons of resource that you'd get in a sort of normal brigade or division. So to give somebody an application that could, for instance, this was like live updates. So it was using sort of internet scraping to go, okay, ahead of you, there's a barrier, there's a protest, something like that. And people using it on deployments. And I found that really powerful. I then decided I wanted to leave the military, and I started looking at how I could sort of expand this interest that I've sort of generated. I started, and actually just through the military network, that's I think what's really powerful about leaving the military is that you have this incredible landscape of people that work across all sorts of industries and have, I mean, primarily the time to speak to you, no matter how important they are. And by speaking to them, I decided to learn a bit about cloud technology. So I started learning AWS, cloud practitioner, and I then sort of moved over into Azure. And from there, I then sort of started looking at certain companies and eventually found somebody who worked for Microsoft, had a chat, and ended up getting an interview. And I think I was also very lucky that the people I came in contact with at Microsoft gave me the time of day. They saw the fact that I wasn't a natural fit for the role. But I'd come with a lot of experience from my sector defense, but also a sort of really, I guess, a growth mindset.
Well, I think that one of the things that I always think about people who are actively good at transforming things with technology, you don't really start with the technology.
You have to have empathy, don't you, with who's the human, the experience at the end. If you understand it and you've done it, then you know what's needed, isn't it? And sometimes IT gets criticised for being not talking to the business and just creating tech for tech's sake. But I suppose in your perspective, you can go, well, I understand what the end user really needs, so let's start with that, isn't it?
Yeah, it's about thinking through, well, what's my experience as an end user in any circumstance? And how can that be better? I honestly think technology transformation, no matter how big and grand it ultimately gets, and sometimes it does get big and grand, really comes down to that, doesn't it?
Yeah, there's only two things. You want an outcome or you want an experience.
I don't even think in tech as well. I think also in transformation. If you know what it's like to be a team member in a software team, or if you know how to work in customer service, and then you step up to the ladder of leader, you can step into that mindset, like, what would I need? You know, how did managers talk to me about a new change or a transformation? So it's not even, I think, in tech, but it's also in being able to step into someone else's shoes.
Yeah, and then that you've made an extremely big transition from one world to another world, and living in both must help as well. You must see some frustrations on both sides of the fence, I suppose.
Exactly. And one big thing I saw was when we created something new. So, for instance, during coronavirus, we brought in an application that was supposed to get rid of WhatsApp, because the military was very worried about the fact we were basically organizing our lives on that service and not on a controlled service. But it was the experience of, okay, I need my troops to actually download this. I need them to have it on. Like, for instance, for this application, they needed it on the entire time. And I was just said to them, a private soldier is not going to do that. And then when I give him an order, or I say, be here at this time, and he doesn't turn up, there's nothing I can really say to go, it's their fault. It's actually just, we weren't actually thinking about their experience, that soldier's experience. And the fact that, I remember setting work for my soldiers, and I was like, oh, just go onto your laptop and do this. And he was like, sir, I don't have a laptop, because he's only got a phone. We weren't provisioning a lot of these things to the end user, so it was really difficult to do.
I see, and let's just go a little bit deeper on what your day job experience is. And for a lot of us, some of the circumstances you find yourself in are pretty unique and sometimes startling situations. So maybe just build on it a little bit and just tell us what your day job was at this point, and how you were trying to think about the soldier experience.
So I suppose for me in this job now, one of the principal elements is that I focus on connected devices. So a lot of what I work on currently is very focused, or at least that I can talk about, is very focused on more back-end, larger services. And so I feel that there can often be a disconnect between how those services are provisioned and how we go from something very far away to that end user, to that soldier, sort of sailor, etc. And so I think one thing I really want to always bring in is that, okay, how does this affect that person? How does it affect their families, and all these sort of things that we're trying to ultimately deliver to.
Right. Very good. So you must have seen in the time that you have been experiencing that yourself, and then specifically now from your sort of perspective looking back on the industry, quite a number of shifts in both what defense is trying to do, the nature of conflict that defense is involved in, and then the individuals, whether it be soldier or sailors, experiencing it. In your head, what does that shift look like from a first-hand experience?
I feel that IT within the military and technology has gone more and more, it's become democratized. So when I first started, you had a DII tower. Right. And that was pretty much the only bit of IT you touched.
And what was a DII tower?
Oh, sorry, just a standalone computer.
Right.
So just like you used to have at home, and that was it. If you logged into it, no one else could access it. Right. So if my platoon sergeant logged in, I'd have to call him and say, the computer's locked. I'm going to pull the plug on it if you don't get to the office in 5 minutes.
This is how Robert likes to run his home technology. He's like, David, the safest way to stay safe and in a cyber world is not plug into the internet.
We talk about World Password Day must be coming up soon, and it's all like clacking. But it's the writing your password down on a bit of paper and leaving it in a drawer is a bit more secure than sticking it online, isn't it? That's that, isn't it? Yeah.
Now, I assume you didn't do that. Around the town was the loads of post-it notes and everyone's different passwords.
I won't say there was, but I won't say there wasn't. And it was just something that was there. We did some work on it, but it wasn't very central to what we did.
Right.
for instance, like the only other technology was Bowman radio, and that had a lot of the range of it was usually quite challenged by the terrain we were moving in. We had combat, so that's essentially a situational awareness program inside the warrior armored vehicles. That was very temperamental.
Right.
And throughout training, we were told essentially never guarantee access to this. And actually, in an actual deployed state, I never had it work. So,
oh, no way.
We had it in trainers,
right?
But they would turn it off in the trainers as well. So we would then.
So you knew what to do because the thing was so flaky.
Yeah. But I'm, just imagine I go from being able to see various other units to my left and right, maybe sort of particular areas on the map my command wants me to focus on, and then suddenly I go back, and it's radio orders on a map.
You've got. I mean, it's that classic. It's like when SatNav came in. It was so convenient and gave you so much information, converged technology, David, satellite communications, it's all linked.
Crowbarred it right in there.
I got crowbarred.
Didn't take long.
You can imagine with it on, ace, fantastic, huge benefit, and suddenly it disappears. You're like, oh, where is everyone?
Yeah. And it was, so orders would come through on the radio, but in a warrior, you've got your higher command in one ear and your local command in the other. So you could be receiving orders and it was essentially codes you had to write down. If it was raining and you had the hatch open, you'd be hoping that your pen worked. And that was what you went back to the moment that system went down.
And give us a timestamp for this. Are we talking what year?
So this would have been 2017.
2017.
Yeah.
Okay.
And essentially my output, my capacity to be effective on the battlefield was usually down to whether my Lumi color would work.
So you see, now this, when we talk about experience, this is the empathy, isn't it? So you're like, your pen might not be working, your bits of paper, and we're wondering if it should be blue, green, or red on the. And it's like, maybe that's not what they're interested in. Yeah, my console doesn't work. But also, two ears receiving different information whilst you're wondering where your pen's gone. That's got to be quite stressful at times, I'd imagine.
Exactly. And suddenly people start moving everywhere and there's vehicles shooting right, left. And you just go, okay, where do I need to move to? How am I going to find this information out?
Right.
Because there's no repository. I can't go back. And also trying to talk on the net, it's very, very busy.
Yeah, right.
And you can't just go on and say, I'm really sorry, repeat serial 3. It's so difficult to jump on the net and sort of say that. So, and there's no revisionary, so it's really, really complicated. And I'm also thinking about I'm thinking about my company, my platoon, the people I have in the back of the vehicle. There's so much going on the entire time.
So zoom us forward 5 years from that portrait, and how was the sort of digitalization of that experience moving forward at that point? So
as I was leaving, I think the situational awareness was definitely coming down to the individual. So I believe it's ATAX, essentially Android as an open system, people being able to fold out and start getting that information. However, I would argue, and I was in an HQ role at this point, but that was something that was provisioned sometimes, but not all the time.
Right.
It was definitely a nice to have. It wasn't an expectation that you would receive that.
And to make something like that work effectively, there's a lot of infrastructure that has to go around it. Communication, SATCOMs, 5G, etc. There's a lot that has to be in place for that experience to actually be functional.
And let's just be clear on the experience. What exactly was it? Are we talking like a laptop, or are we talking like a phone?
A phone.
Yeah.
Essentially,
folds down.
It would fold out. Now, I also specialize in jungle warfare.
Right.
I know right now that no technology, like a phone, wouldn't survive that. I think even ruggedized, because most HF radios wouldn't survive that.
Right.
At times, I remember being underwater with my rifle above my head.
No way.
Crossing a river. So any technology I carried with me had to survive that.
Right.
Right. So it was like one of those things where...
It beats your, can I just say, it beats your train experience this morning, Dave. The tale of woe you gave us on
it was busy.
Here.
It was busy.
This is hardship right here. This is where you understand, leveling. Sorry, continue, please. It's
No, and I suppose also one interesting thing as well is that even though you're sort of getting these additional technologies, one big thing is how to power it all.
Yeah.
Because if I'm out,
and keep it charged.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because, for instance, if I was on a jungle exercise, in terms of, say, armored ones, you could be out for weeks, months, potentially. And so the redundancy is important, but also, do I carry batteries? How do I dispose of them? Because I have to carry everything with me. Bowman batteries, I think they were around, they're probably about 15, 20 centimeters. They're huge. And
how many charges do you get off something like that?
A couple of maybe 12, 24 hours off a Bowman battery.
Right.
It's a lot of administration. And actually, the Afghan experience, the idea that we went from being very light scale to people carrying 60, 70 kilos worth of kit.
Right.
And then actually, it's like, is technology making that easier? Is it meaning I can leave some kit behind?
I was going to ask a similar question to that, which is, does the hassle of having to deal with all of that, and I'm sure the stress of having to deal with all of that, is the experience good enough to justify all of the effort you have to put in to get the thing in the first place?
That's a really great question, because I'm not sure. And I suppose because I was going through a stage of quite fundamental change, I think I was seeing these sort of the alphas of that, and it would be fantastic to go back and sort of chat to people now. But for instance, thinking about the ATAC, like the idea of something for a phone folding out. How do I open that and view it at night without somebody seeing that signature?
Yeah, of course.
Can I view it through night vision?
Right.
Or do I need? And also, what's the signature of that?
Right.
It's all these things that actually, as a user, I know I can go under a poncho, pull out a pinprick torch, and look at my map, and sort of find where I am, find where I need to go. That works. I can have a recce platoon build a model using cardboard, and I can, note that down, write a pencil sketch of it, something like that, and then go and attack that objective. It's actually, I think a lot of it, particularly in the infantry, was down to those core skills protected me, made sure that I could be as covert as possible. And so that the impact of technology was like, okay, is this going to make me like more lethal? But also, is this going to make me more easily compromised in a tactical situation?
It's like that thinking that's very there. It says, we'll load them up with tech and it'll be great because they'll have all the information they ever needed to make the next best decision. And you go, actually, that might not be very convenient for the situation. And it's that learning, I suppose. And I'm sure a lot of people who aren't in that world don't really think in that way. And there's that sort of so when you're talking to people who haven't lived the world you've lived in, is it a painful sort of process to go through to try and explain the situation, or they latch on and understand quickly? Because what you've got is invaluable experience for those who build tech.
I think it's definitely depends on the individual, but in the mainstay, it's getting in early enough to ingrain that experience in the development of whatever we're talking about. Because sometimes you get right near the end and you sort of say, for instance, we looked at augmented reality, like the idea you could wear glasses or something like that. And I was thinking, well, I wear cam cream. Are these easy to wipe?
Yeah.
Do they steam up?
Yeah.
And it just, somebody could get right to the end stage and think, this is perfect. And then suddenly they're like, oh, wait, no, this doesn't work because that's the person who's going to use this will use it in a certain way. Is it impact proof? Because I want my eyes protected from blast, or fragmentation. Is it sort of tested to those levels? All these sort of things. It's getting in early, building that user experience in, because that's usually one where it's best received, but also most useful, because sometimes you get these fantastic products and they're just not viable for an actual tactical user.
Yeah, well, the built for normal kind of just day-to-day life.
Yeah. And
not life in the extremes at either end, you know what I mean? So it's like the economies of scale of it are going to make that difficult, aren't they? So you wouldn't want, like, that Ray-Ban Meta glasses. They're probably not suitable for the sort of environments you're talking about, I suspect.
Yeah.
But they were never designed for that in the first place. I wonder
Exactly.
I wonder whether experience design around the sort of experiences you're talking about has now become a thing. So you've moved from being the thing, the technology that's supporting us may or may not even work, to a situation where the technology may or may not be helping you, but actually it's almost burdening the situation because you're now having to think about charging and keeping things dry and all of those sorts of things. Has it now evolved to a point where experience design is more around what's required and the conditions that it's in?
So I think it is improving, but also one thing is that a lot of what's purchased is purchased for, say, the army. And so it will be incorporating a number of different personas within that use case.
Right.
And actually we saw that in a lot of the, personal load, so backpacks and those kind of things, body armor. It was built for a general user rather than specific personas within that. So I think in general, the answer is yes. But actually, when we consider, okay, what does the logistician who's driving the 8-ton vehicle need? What does the infantryman, who's deploying from a warrior armored vehicle need? I think actually because these programs are quite large, they need to incorporate loads of personas in one. And actually that can mean that the end result is quite divergent for maybe certain groups within that.
And do you get where you've tried to design it for so many personas, it actually just makes something that's crap for everyone?
Yeah.
So it's universally crap, as opposed to let's have 3 variants of it, or try and make it all in one, and you go, nobody likes it.
Robert spent his career becoming a level 4 architect. You know a lot about this.
Yeah. How do we homogenize this so it's crap for everyone? I am an expert at
What
it.
I like to think is lowest common denominator design wins the day.
But I think it's the one that gets through all the governance committees anyway, Dave. I'm an expert at getting things through governance. World class, my friend.
But you see it in technology now that every different part of the military wants something unique to them.
Yeah.
Right.
And actually there is a power in that each branch of the military will have specific use cases. But I think it's almost a spectrum of, at one end we want something really specialized that helps individuals and individual personas. And then on the left-hand side, you've got something that is so general it's pointless.
Yeah, there you go. I just
So where do you funnel your ideas? Do they actually come from the field, or is it, how do you make sure that those ideas in the first place are really coming from a problem that they would like to be solved, or how does that work?
So I suppose for me, I will always try and ingrain, I suppose, because a lot of what I do is quite high level at the moment. So some of the principal things have been working with more back-end systems. It's really trying to incorporate, I'm just trying to do that almost as a mental check as I go through. In the mission space, it's a lot easier to incorporate those things really early and sort of say, okay, how does that, I think from my experience, I would think this could be better or this could change. And actually what's really good in that process, as well as on those sort of mission specific items, you're usually working with a team who's deploying this and utilizing it on a day-to-day.
So you verify in the beginning, right? I think. Yeah.
Definitely. Because also one thing is that my experience is not universal, but also is not, I'm sort of I've been out for a couple of years, so I don't want to come in and say, oh, I did it like this. I'm trying to build that in and empathize a lot more with those people who are doing the job now.
And I can imagine that they also respond differently to you than if a corporate consultant, not mentioning
don't point
any
at
names.
me. You just for the listeners, Ez pointed straight at me when she said that. Not Dave, me. I got that.
Some of us have, I haven't lived anything like that, but some of us have lived on the consumer side of it, Robert. We've 25 years or so.
Right, I'm just going to fold my arms in a rump now. That's it for me.
But Rob is better at governance than me. There is no doubt about that. He's excellent at it.
Yeah, but I don't think you even want to. Do you want to be better at that?
But it's a very interesting point, though, which is the my world, or enough about my world that you'll understand what I'm going through. Therefore, I want to talk to you.
You speak the same language?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The lexicon's the same,
Empathy is always the important thing. I did want to zoom out from the individual experience that we've talked about quite a bit there, to the changing nature of conflict itself, especially over the course of, say, the last, you pick a time period. I'm going to say 20 years. It might be shorter or longer than that, but how do you characterize that, especially having lived through some of it?
Yeah, so when I came into the military, we were definitely moving from the Afghan generation, so that was definitely winding down. The idea of the centrality of counterinsurgency operations into how militaries respect, the vehicles we were using, the equipment we were carrying, that was definitely ending, and we were moving back towards a more conventional form of combat. But actually, it was a conventional form of combat that was grounded in a Cold War experience. The idea of large tracks of armor moving across Central Europe, big maneuvers and things like that. But I think there was also a recognition from the British perspective that we didn't have the scale to do that anymore.
Right.
We didn't quite have the British Army of the Rhine, the size, and almost sort of extremely sad. But the Ukraine war starting, and I remember being in camp when that was announced, sort of hearing on BBC News, and I think what that brought into stark reality was that some parts of that Cold War experience still maintained.
Right.
There are large defensive fortifications along the border. There's barbed wire. There's trenches. It's very grounded.
Very physical.
Yeah, but there's also drones. I think drones are the standout technology from the Ukraine war.
Right.
The idea that tanks are now developing, there's huge like awnings and different sort of ways of up armoring, sort of from, we have reactive armor that was quite traditional, but now we have all sorts of ways of defeating drones, and armor's it was quite prevalent at the beginning of the war, but now it's becoming less prevalent because they're high value assets.
Right.
And I think understanding that sort of, actually, some of this is moving quite quickly. Some of this is very technology dependent, drone warfare, all those sort of things. But actually, a lot of this is still grounded in a very physical, a very difficult, defensive experience. And that's something that I remember being the toughest part of my training. But, and I think it's something that we thought it would be a lot more maneuver based.
Right.
But actually, entrenched defensive positions supported by technology is something we're seeing more and more, and actually I think is what Ukraine is showing to be something more like what we'd see if we went to war now.
I see. I mean, a very sad and complex situation for sure. How do you think it impacts like the technology enablement around that and education for soldiers being in a tragic situation like that? How does that show up today? It sounds like maybe in some of the characterization you were talking about before that it was a little bit like you need to be trained for when things are not working. You got to sort of assume it's not going to work. Is that different now on the ground, do you think? Or fundamentally, because there's still that element of very difficult physicality about it, it is actually broadly the same no matter how good your smartphone is?
So I think the learning process is speeding up. So I think you're right that the absence of technology is still something that develops. There's jamming, there's all these sorts of things. Yeah. However, if you look at, say, people taking phones in, I think it's more prevalent at the beginning of the war and then being targeted by, opposing force assets. The cycle of change has been sped up because when we talk about actual conflict, we can write change unfortunately, in lives. And, to take an example from, Afghanistan, the idea of the development of vehicles, V-shaped hulls. Like I remember going through training for when a vehicle turns over. And the whole point was because when they realized they couldn't blow up vehicles, they started pushing them into ditches and trying to fill the troop carrying areas with water.
Right.
And so you had ways to cut out of it. All these adaptations came at the cost of somebody getting hurt or unfortunately at times killed. And so Ukraine has sped that up. And I think that's the real innovation, and where because they're written in, unfortunately, in sort of some of the highest costs, in some really unfortunate costs.
Right. And if we kind of zoom out then from the sort of the defense industry itself and talk about that from a perspective that you hold now, which is the tech enablement industry, back onto it. What do you think the responsibility of the tech industry is on helping and making this better as much as is possible?
Yeah. So if we take Microsoft's actions, in Ukraine, like we managed to move alongside a lot of other technology companies, a lot of assets out of Ukraine and allow their government to continue functioning. However, that comes with a massive amount of responsibility. Us and other technology providers are now trusted by governments all over the world to store important data, to run important services. Now, that trust needs to be maintained, and so security must be paramount. It must be the first thing we think about and the last thing to make sure that malign actors aren't sort of accessing that information. We also need to sort of preserve the availability of services because ultimately, for us, it's a server maybe going down. For, someone in the UK, it's their, a app they would get an NHS appointment or something like that going down. So I think the burden on technology companies is to basically fulfill the level of trust that they are now getting from governments, from companies and users.
So So Ben, we've been talking about like innovations in the field and user experience. What I think a lot of stories also, especially in the last couple of years, are about improvisation, like hacking apps and drones, etc., in the field. What do you see in that space?
Well, I think one of the key things I'm seeing in this space is just the fact that so much more technology and education is available. So soldiers can go out and do these things and actually use their intuition and some of the incredible technologies available to just find what works for them. And I think, having Ukraine, but also, for people locally, like there's a lot more understanding of how important this is. I still think it's a little stifled, particularly in the UK. I think, we still have a lot of governance and things which are important, but actually, I remember getting deployed. I gave a drone to one of my team, and by the end, I had all these assets because he'd just gone off. He'd done a little bit of interesting data work in the sidelines and was like, "Boss, check this out," and that's really cool, and it's just giving people space to do that.
That's so important, right? We talk about that, about being having freedom, autonomy. Use your intuition. Go out and do something, and you might find something you add value and improvise. I suppose from your world that you talk about, it's almost allowed more because you have to do it if you want to get advantage and understand what's going on. Whereas sometimes when we think about back at base or whatever, it's a bit more stifling and you're not allowed to go and do that. So it's we need to learn more from this type of...
But you don't say that it's actually the system failing, or is it the way you really, if you improvise, you really, you experience it on the spot. So it's actually innovation. What would you say?
So I wouldn't say the system's failing, because I suppose the system is actually delivering, we're delivering training, we're delivering people with the right education, equipment, and things like that. But the amount of time that takes seems only to grow. And I suppose it can stifle that opportunity. So it's almost that it's, in some ways, there's too much of the system. And it's not leaving gaps for people to have space to innovate. Going on deployment is almost a suspension of that cycle, and actually being in an environment where they can play, they can test things out. And actually, I remember speaking to friends who sort of gone to certain aspects of the military, and they basically allowed them more and more space to innovate and to experiment with things. And they've loved it. And they've been like, I don't want to go back to, the day to day. But I suppose that system is delivering what we as British people need defence to deliver. We need sort of capable soldiers, well-trained, ready to go. And it is delivering that. It's just maybe not allowing space for innovation to move forward and take us into that next stage.
It's that power of crowdsourcing. If you give a problem to a crowd and you just let them go off and try and work out on their own, you come back with some absolutely outstanding answers that you just never thought of. Diversity in that group and just what they're going to do with it. You find some really cool stuff, and it's like, maybe we should do a lot more of that. Well, it sounds like we should anyway.
Well, yeah, but would you say that it's actually changing the system or forcing the system to change to keep up with the speed of innovation in the field?
Yes. So yes, I would say that it's because also if we think about, particularly when we come to technology, that we have, soldiers or any person in the military can see stuff happening. They can access incredible technology on their mobiles, and then they actually deploy into the field with a weapon. They're like, I've gone from the 21st century back into the 20th. How does this work? And actually, I'm more vulnerable now. I want these technologies. I want to be able to ask an LLM, hey, what do you think the enemy's going to be doing now? Hey, where is my team to my left? Where are the other formation units? And so I suppose that is creating that momentum. And also just, I guess, how accessible technology is. You can have people excel really quickly through that. And I think the military is encouraging that in a big way. We're starting to see the professionalization of a lot more technology skills within the military. So that is helping to build, I guess, sort of change the system from the inside as well.
And do you think there's a generational thing in there as well? Because obviously it's one of the fields where the more experience you have, there's a huge advantage to that. But also you might not have maybe grown up with technology in the same way. Do you see that as a generational gap of new people coming in with different thinking to maybe people who've been there a long time? Or are they adapting faster? It's just a...
Yeah, I'd say it's difficult to pin, because I think from my perspective, particularly when I came to the operational end, the commanders I was working with were really focused on innovation. They were really keen for ideas. And I suppose it's that mission focus. When you maybe stepped away, and I suppose we're sort of back in the day-to-day of things, that's when it can be a bit more stifling. And that's where I think you maybe find that traditional, no, we need to train, we need then need to go to operate, where actually, they're sort of part of that older system. Whereas actually a lot of the people I came into contact with who just had a mission, they were like, hey, I want your ideas because to me, this is really complex. I want you to come in and just find something radical to give me options.
But I can imagine that older system is also for the value like safety and compliance and trust.
Yeah.
How do you balance that,
Yeah, safety is a huge one. And I suppose it's something that has been at the fore of, as we move into we haven't been in a sort of active conflict, at least within the army, for a little while. So training and sort of things that can happen during training, it's a dangerous, we're working with vehicles, with explosives, weapons. It's a very dangerous space. And obviously we don't want anyone to get hurt during that. So there's a very natural focus on safety. But at the same time, I think particularly when it comes to technology, we can do a lot with that in a very, very safe way. So in my sort of mind that there's some natural sort of, we need to make sure it's safe. We need to make sure it's governed correctly. But actually it's quite easy to innovate and push the boundaries because it's just naturally a bit safer.
It's so ingrained also in your purpose, right? In your reason of existence, there's safety and there's saving lives.
I mean, you talk about risk in the corporate environment and you talk about risk in this environment. They are very different viewpoints on it.
Well, talking about corporates, you moved into quite a huge corporate company. Yeah. Is there anything that they can learn from the military?
Yeah, so one thing and actually it's just an interesting time of year because our sort of financial year starts in the summer. And actually planning is a huge part of the military.
Yeah.
It's there. We have books and books and books on planning. We love it. Yet planning to me doesn't seem to be a very focused activity.
Have you been watching Marcel planning this show?
Yeah. I mean, he did look at Marcel with daggers when he said about poor planning.
I saw his eyes go to it's where Marcel's sitting.
Collateral damage. Yeah. Anyway.
But for me, planning is very effective when done in the right way. And I think some orchestration never hurts because I work with some incredibly intelligent people and a lot of people who are quite independent in some ways, but actually sort of working together, building a plan together in a really focused way, I think would make us give us so much more. And I think in general, I sort of see that for me, it was such a big part of being in the military was planning, and I don't see it as much in a sort of corporate sense. So I would definitely encourage more of that and more, maybe a few more chief of staff, sort of directing. You've got 3 minutes to do this, you've got 2 minutes to do that. I think I'd love that a little bit, but maybe I'm sort of just a sucker for it.
Missed the world you knew. Yeah.
Well, look, thank you for joining us today, Ben, and sharing some, really fascinating insights into a whole other world, but very similar paradigms in terms of experience design, in terms of how technology is changing what's possible, but also why in your world improvisation also remains a real skill and being able to actually still exist without technology supporting the situation. So thank you very much for sharing that with us today.
Thank you.
Now, we end every episode of this podcast by asking our guest what they're excited about doing next. And that might be you have a great restaurant booked at the weekend, or it might be something in your professional life, or maybe a little bit of both. So, Ben, what are you excited about doing next?
Well, I've booked my first 100-mile bike race in the Peak District.
On an e-bike? We're assuming it's an e-bike here now.
Unfortunately, not an e-bike.
No. You can get e-bikes now.
you know that technology exists.
I also heard just today that they're more environmentally friendly than a normal bike.
What plonker told you that, Dave?
I don't. It's an unlikely statistic. Let's face it.
It's about because you pedal harder.
Yeah.
More breath used, more CO2 expelled.
Are you going to explain it again to us?
No.
I don't know whether you're buying this, but are you going with the environmentally friendly way of doing it, or are you going to do it in the old traditional way?
I think I'm going to do it in the traditional way.
You're going to breathe out.
I think I will be. I think it's 2,600 meters of ascent. So I think by the end I will be begging for an e-bike. But
2.6 kilometers up. I mean, that's
Outstanding. You know, you don't have to do these things.
I know. I just think it's part of my brain, unfortunately.
And where's that from too? What's the...
So Bakewell, it's a big loop around Bakewell.
Okay, yeah. And you're going to get a tart halfway
exactly
through.
what I was about to say. They don't call them tarts, they call them pies.
Bakewell pies?
I think it's something like that.
Pie?
No, I know outside of Bakewell. No, Bakewell pudding, that's what they call them.
That's it, pudding,
yes.
yeah, Bakewell pudding.
And then you can do some Tai Chi afterwards.
Yeah.
Yes.
If I can
Don't get me started on Tai Chi, I'm all over that.
After cycling 2.6 kilometres upwards, I'm not entirely convinced you'd want to do some Tai Chi.
Bakewell pudding, they are pretty good.
Yeah. I can't wait. But hopefully that'll be at the end when I've completed it. So
well, look, we wish you nothing but the best for that. Good luck with it.
Thank you so much.
I hope it goes very well.
If you would like to discuss any of the issues of this week's show and how they might impact you and your business, please get in touch with us at cloudrealities@capgemini.com. We're on LinkedIn and on Substack. We'd love to hear from you, so feel free to connect and DM if you have any questions for the show to tackle. And of course, please rate and subscribe to our podcast. It really helps us improve the show. A huge thanks to our guest Ben, our sound and editing wizards Ben and Louie, our producer Marcel, and of course to all our listeners. See you in another reality next week.